Meet our hopeless main character, Naoya Mukai. A regular high school kid already head over heels for his childhood friend Saki when his classmate Nagisa confesses her feelings out of nowhere. This absolute fool, instead of doing the sensible thing, somehow convinces both girls to date him simultaneously. And now all three of them are living under the same roof together. Let's see how he manages both baddies under one roof. Naoya is absolutely over the moon when Saki, the girl he has been crushing on since childhood, finally agrees to be his girlfriend, and his excitement is the kind that makes everyone around him slightly uncomfortable. Before heading off to her club, Saki playfully warns him not to go getting any funny ideas while she is gone, and Naoya responds by pulling her into a full-on dramatic hug, declaring that cheating would be completely impossible because his love for her runs too deep. Saki, visibly flustered by his intensity, awkwardly goes along with it while probably questioning her own decision. Not long after, while Naoya is standing on the school rooftop minding his own business, a girl named Nagisa walks up and drops a confession on him without any warning whatsoever. She then asks him what he thinks of how she looks, and Naoya, who has never once heard of the word tact, tells her she is pretty without a second thought. Nagisa absolutely glows at that, explaining that she spent an entire year working on herself from the inside out, even picking up cooking because she believed that was the fastest way to a man's heart. Then she goes ahead and asks him out. Naoya turns her down immediately, citing his love for Saki, but Nagisa refuses to fold and boldly declares she is not giving up. Her sheer determination impresses him enough that he decides, right there on the spot, that the most logical solution is to simply date both of them at the same time. Nagisa shuts that down immediately, but Naoya wears her down by promising he will go ask Saki for permission himself, and against all reasonable judgment, Nagisa agrees. Naoya brings the two girls together, and Saki, trying her best to be decent about it, compliments Nagisa and even suggests they become friends. They spend some time together before sitting down to eat the meal Nagisa prepared, and that is precisely when Naoya floats his two-girlfriend plan. Saki's response is a clean punch to his jaw, and she turns to Nagisa, demanding to know how she could agree to something so ridiculous. Nagisa, carrying the emotional weight of someone truly desperate, explains that this is her only real shot and begs Saki to reconsider. Saki nearly softens because Nagisa is genuinely sweet, but she pulls herself together and calls the whole thing abnormal. Nagisa sweetens the deal by offering to cook every single day, and Naoya promises to give everything he has to keep both of them happy. Saki, worn completely down, reluctantly agrees, and soon they are all living together under one roof, with Naoya handling cleaning, Nagisa handling cooking, and Saki contributing absolutely nothing to the household. During bath time, Naoya offers to wash Saki's back and gets thrown out immediately, right as Nagisa walks in. Saki notices Nagisa's figure and quietly grows insecure, while Nagisa cheerfully tells them both to carry on without worrying about her. Saki then accidentally blurts out that she and Naoya have not even kissed yet, which leaves Nagisa quietly pleased in a way Saki finds completely unfair. When Saki later asks Naoya about his intentions toward Nagisa, he responds with his usual honest awkwardness, saying he simply wants the three of them to share small, meaningful moments together and that he has no plans to push any boundaries. Rather than feeling reassured, Saki looks almost disappointed, though she denies it when he notices. Privately, she is struggling with the fact that Nagisa's warmth and unwavering devotion are genuinely hard to compete with, and when she asks Nagisa if any of this feels uncomfortable, Nagisa simply replies that she would do anything as long as it makes Naoya happy, which somehow manages to make everything feel worse for Saki. When they head to the bedroom, both girls are caught off guard by 3 futons laid out side by side, and Naoya explains that sleeping this way will help them all grow closer. Saki immediately suspects he is planning to try something with Nagisa once she drifts off, and even admits that she would probably do the same thing if the roles were reversed. Naoya settles in between them, and since Saki stays silent when he thanks them both, he and Nagisa assume she has fallen asleep. Nagisa quietly asks if she can move closer, and Naoya takes her hand, telling her he genuinely wants to understand her better. Saki, who has been wide awake the entire time, jumps in expecting the worst, only to find them simply holding hands. Feeling embarrassed and left out, she announces that she wants to share Naoya's futon too, which leads him to quietly conclude that she must be feeling lonely. The following morning, Nagisa is up early making breakfast and privately reflecting on how unusual their situation really is. She feels genuinely happy, but also accepts deep down that this arrangement will not last and that when it eventually falls apart, she will be the one walking away first. While cooking, she scrolls through Saki's phone out of curiosity and stumbles across some rather revealing search history that leaves her both surprised and quietly amused. Naoya wakes up, notices what she is doing, and later mentions it to Saki, who who immediately panics and takes her frustration out on him entirely. Over breakfast, Nagisa mentions she shares their class but has been away attending cooking lessons, all to impress Naoya. They offer to help her catch up on missed work, but Math sends her hiding in the bathroom repeatedly, pretending to look it up while understanding absolutely nothing. The next day, Saki reminds everyone that their arrangement has to stay completely private to protect their reputations. When Nagisa seems lonely and unrecognized in class, Naoya tries to ease it by playfully introducing himself as if they have never met. His conscience then pushes him toward blurting their secret out to everyone, and Saki has to physically drag him away before he ruins everything. Nagisa, unbothered, hands them their lunches and casually mentions she plans to eat alone in the bathroom so nobody notices the matching meals, and that single statement quietly breaks both of them. Saki makes it clear that treating Nagisa like a stranger at school simply does not sit right with her, even though the three of them are doing their best to keep their unusual relationship under wraps. Naoya agrees and suggests they share lunch somewhere out of sight to avoid drawing unnecessary attention, while Saki reminds everyone that staying low-key is absolutely essential if they want to keep things smooth. Nagisa, however, gently insists that they really do not need to go through all that trouble on her behalf, explaining that she already feels grateful just to be allowed to share Naoya with Saki, and that pushing to act like close friends in public might be asking for too much. Saki, being her naturally loud and expressive self, questions whether that would truly be selfish, and unfortunately her voice carries a little further than intended, causing students nearby to immediately look around toward where the three of them are huddled. The group freezes, and before Nagisa can even respond to Saki's whispered question about the lunch boxes, Naoya blurts out that Nagisa is being far too modest, earning himself a firm smack from Saki for completely killing the moment. Nagisa admits she would genuinely love to share lunch with them at school, but both Saki and Naoya respond with too much enthusiasm, attracting a teacher's attention and sending all three of them running. Once they have escaped, Nagisa mentions that she used to eat alone back in middle school and suggests the bathroom area behind the school since it tends to stay deserted, but the condition of the place makes it completely unbearable and Saki refuses without hesitation. They try several nearby spots, but the lingering smell follows them everywhere until Naoya suggests the gym warehouse. And after Nagisa pushes the bathroom idea one too many times and gets begged to drop it, they sneak in through a small window and finally enjoy their meal in peace. While eating, Nagisa offers to do anything Naoya might need, which Saki immediately misreads before Nagisa calmly points out that Saki does plenty for Naoya herself, leaving Saki genuinely stumped as she realizes she has not done anything particularly meaningful for him lately. When she asks what he wants, Naoya simply offers to buy her cake, and she agrees before catching herself having let him do the giving once again. Determined to change that, Saki goes shopping, intending to cook something impressive, ends up with gummies instead of proper ingredients, attempts curry, burns herself, and dramatically concludes that physical intimacy is the only thing she can genuinely offer him. She gathers her courage, but Naoya turns her down immediately, reminding her of the boundaries they had agreed to. Convinced his refusal is because he finds Nagisa more attractive, Saki storms out and leaves a note saying she has gone back home, which happens to be right next door. Naoya fills Nagisa in on what happened, and realizing they are now alone together makes her visibly flustered, though Naoya makes it clear he intends to bring Saki back. The following morning, he stands on the balcony holding an oversized letter filled with his feelings, reads it aloud when she throws it back at him, and turns the whole thing into something both dramatic and slightly ridiculous. Over the next several days, Naoya pours everything into winning Saki back, but she refuses to budge no matter what he does. Nagisa, noticing he has not slept in 3 days, gently tells him she would be enough if Saki chose to walk away, but Naoya refuses to accept that, making it clear he cannot give up on either of them. Determined to break the deadlock, Nagisa takes a bold step by grabbing his hand and pressing it against her chest, where Saki can clearly see from the balcony, which sends Saki launching herself down immediately, as Nagisa calmly tells her that now they can finally have a real conversation. Saki finally admits that she left because she genuinely feels like Nagisa is better than her in every way. From the effort she puts into the relationship to her cooking skills, and standing next to her makes Saki feel like she simply cannot measure up. Naoya tries to reassure her that those comparisons mean nothing, but Saki cuts him off and declares that he will eventually choose Nagisa over her, then turns to leave until Naoya grabs her hand and refuses to let go. Frustrated and emotional, she punches him hard enough to send him to the ground, then grabs his shirt and demands to know why he never once asks her for anything, recalling every time she offered help and he told her to rest while he handled everything himself. Nagisa confirms it honestly, and Naoya, caught off guard, apologizes and kneels before them both, telling them to hold him accountable, which Saki does immediately without hesitation. He then tells Saki everything he genuinely wants from her, from seeing her smile more often to eating her cooking even when it burns, and the moment gets slightly out of hand when he blurts something bold enough to turn both girls red before Saki shuts it down. He settles on what matters most, which is simply all three of them continuing to live together happily. That evening, Nagisa cooks a celebratory dinner. The girls bond over gaming where Saki absolutely dominates despite Nagisa claiming over 1,000 hours of practice, and when Nagisa pulls up a streamer named Marika to study gameplay, Saki dismisses her immediately, while Naya quietly notices the school uniform in the thumbnail looks exactly like theirs. The next day, their suspicion grows when the thumbnail gets updated, and before they can even discuss it properly, a girl named Rika climbs straight through the warehouse window Saki had confidently claimed was locked. Rika assumes the worst about the situation. Naya loudly confirms the 2 timing before anyone can stop him. And when Nagisa calmly asks whether Rika is actually Marika the MeTuber and pulls out a saved screenshot as proof, Rika's reaction says everything. Cornered and out of options, she agrees to stay quiet, and Naoya's straightforward honesty about the whole situation surprises her so genuinely that she announces on the spot that she intends to become his 3rd girlfriend. Rika's confidence catches everyone off guard, but Nagisa wastes no time questioning her real motives, suggesting that Rika is simply looking for a boyfriend to protect her now that her MeTuber identity has been exposed. Rika denies it immediately, though her flustered reaction makes her far too easy to read, and both Saki and Nagisa exchange glances that say everything. Rika insists she needs no one's help and casually claims that now just feels like the right time to find a boyfriend, which Saki finds completely unconvincing. She then shifts tactics entirely and starts listing her qualities directly to Naoya, describing her figure, long legs, and striking appearance, asking confidently whether he agrees she is beautiful. Naoya, being his usual blunt self, admits she is genuinely attractive and that dating her would probably feel like a dream, but then apologizes without a moment's hesitation, leaving Rika completely stunned while Saki wraps her arms around him looking thoroughly satisfied. Rika refuses to accept the rejection and argues that she is clearly superior to both Saki and Nagisa, but Naya calmly tells her that those things simply do not determine who he chooses to be with, explaining that his priority right now is making Saki and Nagisa happy, which leaves both girls blushing and Rika absolutely speechless. Unable to take it any further, Rika storms off, and when they return from school the following day, they find she has pitched an actual tent in their backyard, declaring her full intention to stay until Naoya falls for her. She spends the night streaming from the tent, exercising to stay warm, and by morning she is in desperate need of a bath, which she proceeds to take outdoors in a bikini. Watching her refuse to budge, the trio accepts she is not leaving anytime soon, and Saki comes up with a plan involving swimsuits to keep Naoya's attention on them instead. The plan gets immediately chaotic when Nagisa slips and stumbles into Naoya's face, and Saki, refusing to be outdone, accidentally drops her bra and boldly declares that this means Naoya will now be completely obsessed with her. Nagisa, feeling shy but determined, puts on her swimsuit and asks Naoya to look at her as well, and the moment he does, she turns red and immediately calls him a pervert. The next day, Rika takes things further by cooking lunch right outside the window where the trio can clearly see her, and Naoya decides he has had enough and heads out to reason with her directly. She offers him food, but he brushes it off and tells her to leave. And she simply reminds him that she has already made her position clear, while Saki unhelpfully points out from inside that 2 timing is hardly a proper arrangement either. When Rika picks up a piece of burning charcoal and threatens to throw it if he steps any closer, Nagisa quietly tells him to back off and let things settle. Later, the 4 of them are essentially mirroring each other, with the trio inside drinking tea and Rika doing the same from her tent while watching them through the window. Nagisa urges patience and warns that forcing the situation could make everything worse, and both girls stress to Naoya that approaching this carelessly could seriously backfire. Naoya agrees, but the moment he notices Rika rushing off somewhere, he grabs his phone and starts calling a disposal service to clear out her belongings while she is gone. Saki snatches the phone immediately and Nagisa tells him to explain himself, and he finally admits that the longer Rika stays close, the more he fears he could develop feelings for her, the same way he had with Nagisa, which catches both girls completely off guard. Nagisa puts the probability at 80%. Saki presses her foot on his head to stop the spiral, and when Naoya admits he genuinely cannot fully trust himself, he tells them honestly that falling for Nagisa after already committing to Saki proved he is weaker than he thought, and he refuses to let it happen again. Both girls agree to help clear Rika's belongings while he keeps her occupied, but she returns earlier than expected and catches them loading everything onto a truck. Naoya holds her back calmly through every accusation she throws at him, promises to repay the full cost even if it means working part-time, and hands her a note explaining that keeping distance is simply the fair thing to do for Saki and Nagisa. That honesty reaches Rika somewhere nothing else had, and she quietly tears the note up and agrees to go home. Her father arrives moments later, already furious about her streaming channel and ready to delete everything, and Naoya steps in without hesitation and defends her work genuinely and directly. Rika leaves visibly moved, and Saki and Nagisa take one look at her expression and immediately understand that she has fallen for him, then sit down to figure out what to do about it and reach absolutely no useful conclusion at all. Saki heads back to her place to grab some clothes, but her mother catches her off guard by asking point blank whether she and Naoya have already been physically intimate. The question hits Saki so suddenly that she gets completely defensive, and Naoya denies it just as quickly. Rather than dropping it, her mother takes it a step further and suggests that if Naoya has not made a move despite living with someone as attractive as Saki, he must simply be too logical for his own good. The comment burrows its way into Saki's head and makes her genuinely wonder whether his overthinking will always keep him at a distance, so she decides to take matters into her own hands and shows up in front of him wearing a bunny suit. Naoya, being exactly who he is, immediately shuts it down and reminds her of the boundaries they agreed on, completely missing what she was actually going for. Frustrated, Saki climbs on top of him to make her point, but the costume shifts and she nearly loses her balance, and when Naoya catches her, his hands land somewhere they probably should not have. Saki gets flustered, calls him a pervert, and rushes off, while Naoya is left standing there confused but quietly noticing that she seemed more pleased than upset about the whole thing. The following day, Nagisa picks up on how unusually cheerful Saki is and gets curious. Saki brushes it off, but later, when Nagisa finds the bunny suit, she goes straight to Naoya for answers. He tells her nothing inappropriate happened but mentions that Saki looked genuinely adorable in it, which gives Nagisa an idea of her own. She puts on a maid outfit, and the response she gets from Naoya is warm enough that she asks him to pat her head, which leaves her absolutely glowing. Later at dinner, still riding that feeling, she accidentally blurts out that she loves him, and Saki freezes completely. The next day, Rika is waiting outside Naoya's classroom, lost in her own thoughts and replaying the moment he stood up for her against her father. Saki spots her, immediately calls her by her streamer name in front of everyone, and Rika panics and covers her mouth before the name spreads. Saki, thoroughly amused, tells her that her feelings for Naoya are written all over her face, which Rika denies while looking like the exact opposite of convincing. When Naoya steps out and Rika grabs his hand, insisting on a private conversation, Saki refuses to let them go anywhere alone, and the tension between the two girls rises quickly until Naoya calmly tells Saki it is fine and leads Rika up to the rooftop. Once there, he bows deeply and apologizes for putting her through the humiliation of being turned down by someone already in a complicated relationship, then immediately pulls off his jacket and starts unbuttoning his shirt, offering her a photo of himself in a disheveled state as some kind of apology, and even asking whether she would prefer something more extreme to post online. Rika watches in complete disbelief, somehow finding him both ridiculous and oddly thoughtful at the same time. He tells her honestly that he cannot accept her feelings because the two girls he is already with genuinely matter to him, and that her being as charming as she is makes it even more important that he holds that line. Rika, overwhelmed, collapses for a moment before pulling herself together and thanking him for defending her channel when her father tried to delete it. She explains how her father had always pushed her toward a conventional future she never wanted, and how she started creating content as a way to take control of her own life. She knows the criticism that comes with her style of content, but she has put real thought and effort into building something meaningful. And when Naoya said he would protect it without asking for anything in return, it meant more to her than she expected. Naoya tells her simply that he is glad he could protect something that matters to her, and that quiet sincerity hits her harder than anything else he has said. She bolts, face burning, telling him to stop being so considerate, and as she runs, she mutters to herself about how deeply she has fallen for him, completely unaware that Saki is close enough to hear every word. Rika walks straight into Naoya's classroom and causes an immediate scene, grabbing his arm and loudly claiming they are in a serious relationship before laughing it off as a joke, then pressing herself against him in a way that makes the entire class uncomfortable. Saki has had enough and grabs Rika by the shoulders, telling her firmly to stop, before pulling Naoya close and insisting he stay by her side for the rest of the day. Naoya, completely misreading the situation, wraps his arms around Saki, thinking she is feeling lonely, which sends Rika storming out furiously. He continues holding her even after class begins, suggesting she sit on his lap, and the teacher reluctantly lets the whole thing slide. That evening, Nagisa mentions she wishes someone would hold her that warmly, and after a brief back and forth, the three of them end up in an awkward arrangement where Saki peeks through the doorway watching Naoya hug Nagisa and feels a strange excitement she cannot quite explain until Nagisa accidentally slips and the scene looks suspicious enough that Saki storms straight back in. The following day, Rika follows Naoya home and tries to walk inside, but Saki blocks the door immediately. Naoya starts wondering aloud whether Rika might actually have feelings for him, which visibly rattles both girls. Saki quietly pulls Nagisa aside and tells her they cannot let Naoya figure that out, so she turns around and tells him confidently that Rika is not in love with him and would honestly react that way around any guy. Naoya takes it completely at face value, then genuinely asks whether Saki and Nagisa have ever felt that way themselves, and the conversation spirals into territory that leaves Nagisa thoroughly speechless. Later at school, Naoya spots Rika and immediately apologizes for assuming she had feelings for him, saying it bluntly enough that her face goes completely red and she drags him aside for a private conversation, while Saki and Nagisa follow close behind, not trusting either of them alone for a single second. Once alone, Rika asks Naoya how he figured out she has feelings for him, and he awkwardly explains that Saki had given him a rather creative version of the truth, leaving Saki desperately avoiding eye contact. Naoya doubles down on the theory Saki fed him, insisting Rika is simply flustered around everyone, and when Rika pushes back and asks what he would actually do if she genuinely loved him, he tells her plainly that he would turn her down without hesitation. Rika hits him for it, then walks away more determined than ever to find a way to win him over. Saki barely has time to celebrate before Rika reappears and openly admits she has real feelings for Naoya, grabbing his arm and pulling him aside while Saki and Nagisa follow close behind. Rika tells him directly that ever since he stood up to her father, she has not been able to stop thinking about him. And when Naoya responds by once again offering to help her find someone else, she kisses him without warning and tells him he will not be able to forget it. She then delivers a firm ultimatum, telling him that if he ever wants to be with her, he will have to end things with Saki and Nagisa first. A classmate named Shino, who happens to be Saki's closest friend, overhears the entire exchange and immediately assumes Naoya is cheating. Later, both Saki and Nagisa express genuine disappointment that Rika kissed him before either of them had the chance, and when Naoya offers to kiss them both to make things even, they shut the idea down immediately, accusing him of just trying to smooth over the situation. Saki makes it clear that a first kiss should happen properly and romantically, not like that, and the three of them agree that what they actually need is a real date together, eventually settling on a hot spring trip that everyone feels genuinely good about. Saki sends Naoya off to handle the shopping while Shino tries to pull him aside for a conversation, but Saki tells her it can wait until after they are done at the mall. While browsing, both Saki and Nagisa quietly reach for mints at the same moment and immediately clock what the other is thinking. Rather than pretending otherwise, Saki tells Nagisa there is nothing to be embarrassed about and openly admits she has been planning to kiss Naoya during the trip, despite saying nothing would happen. Nagisa, being genuinely thoughtful about it, reminds Saki that she was there first and offers to help set up the right moment for her. They spend the rest of the shopping trip picking out outfits, with Nagisa choosing things far bolder than Saki's taste, and their back and forth over it makes their differences impossible to miss. Rika watches the whole thing from a distance, already planning to follow them. On the day of the trip, Naoya holds both girls by the hand on the way to the inn, openly stating they have nothing to hide while they are away. They arrive to find Rika already waiting, and shortly after, Shino shows up and asks Naoya directly whether he is dating both Saki and Nagisa. Nagisa steps in smoothly, claiming she and Rika simply ran into them by coincidence, and when Rika tries to contradict her, Nagisa quietly reminds her what she knows about the streaming channel, which is enough to keep Rika in line. Once they reach the room, Naoya and Saki notice Nagisa has slipped away. Her message tells them to enjoy the trip without her since Shino being around makes things complicated, but Naoya refuses to accept that and goes looking for her. He finds her mid-bath and tells her he did not come on this trip to leave anyone out, which sends a flustered Nagisa running off in a panic, leaving Naoya alone with Rika, who wastes absolutely no time bringing up their kiss and asking him exactly what he thought of it. Naoya tells Rika honestly that the kiss caught him off guard and meant nothing to him, which stings her deeply but does nothing to weaken her resolve. She asks him to spend just a few minutes with her, promising to follow his lead completely if he agrees, and he reluctantly gives her 5 minutes. By the time those minutes are up, Rika has only fallen harder, genuinely moved by how straightforward and real he is compared to anyone else she has met. Naoya slips away but immediately trips and lands in the worst possible spot near Shino, who is about to shower and jumps straight to the worst conclusion. He panics trying to explain himself while Shino presses him about whether he is actually dating both girls at once, warning him that kind of arrangement is only going to cause serious damage to Saki in the long run. Before the conversation goes any further, Naoya stumbles again and ends up in an even more embarrassing position right as Saki and Nagisa walk in. Saki cannot resist a sharp comment about what she is seeing, and Nagisa immediately pulls out her phone and starts taking photos, calmly informing Shino that staying quiet would probably be in her best interest. Shino leaves without another word. Nagisa tries to retreat to her own room to keep things from looking suspicious, but Naoya refuses to let her sit out the trip and pushes hard for her to join them until the situation gets so chaotic that Saki physically kicks him out to settle things down. Once it is just the two of them, Saki asks Nagisa directly why she consistently puts everyone else before herself. Nagisa opens up and admits that she has never been naturally gifted at anything, that she has spent most of her life grinding just to reach average, and that the constant effort without reward left her feeling genuinely lost. She then shares how watching Naoya back in primary school, relentlessly pursuing Saki and refusing to quit no matter how many times he was turned down, quietly changed something in her. His determination in the face of something seemingly hopeless made her start pushing through her own struggles the same way, and somewhere in that process, she found her sense of purpose. Being with Naoya feels like the realization of something she had been working toward without even knowing it, and she is completely at peace with where she stands, as long as she gets to remain by his side. Nagisa desperately asks Saki not to say anything to Naoya, but the conversation has already been overheard because Naoya walks out at exactly the wrong moment and catches every word. Rather than making it worse, he quietly tells Nagisa that she should never feel like she has to settle for less, which sends her bolting down the hallway out of pure embarrassment. Naoya and Saki chase after her immediately, and somehow Rika and Shino end up joining the whole chaotic sprint without anyone fully understanding why. While running, Naoya calls out to Nagisa and tells her plainly that she does not have to accept a lesser position in their relationship, and Nagisa shouts back that she is genuinely fine being where she is as long as she gets to stay close to him. When he finally catches up and stops her, he makes his position completely clear, telling her that both she and Saki are equally his priority and that if either of them ever feels like second place, it means he has already broken his promise to them both. Nagisa stands completely speechless. Shino, still trying to piece everything together, starts pushing Nagisa with questions until Nagisa pulls Naoya close and kisses him on the cheek, declaring herself his girlfriend without hesitation. Saki does not back down either, making it clear she has no intention of letting anyone challenge what they have built together. Naoya then explains the situation to Shino as straightforwardly as he always does, which leaves her head spinning. He even mentions being willing to explain it all to Saki's mother if necessary, and Saki shuts that idea down instantly. As things settle, Shino quietly comes to terms with the fact that she has developed feelings for Naoya herself but knows she cannot act on them, and she privately decides she needs to find a way to separate the group, even if only to help herself move on. She then discovers that Rika feels exactly the same way, which frustrates her all over again, and when she confronts Naoya about it, he calmly clarifies that he is only two-timing, not three-timing, which does absolutely nothing to make Shino feel any better about the situation.